You started your business to build something great, but now you find yourself the chief of everything. Juggling all the balls is holding you back. I'm Catherine Brown, and this is the podcast for founders ready to trade the all-the-hat hustle for high-impact growth. We've invited top subject matter experts across all business areas to come share what they believe founders need to know. Start using the levers that actually move the needle. Welcome to Chief of Everything. I'm excited for you to listen to this episode with my friend, Jason Lee. Jason's LinkedIn header says, quote, "If it involves money or people, we need to talk," close quote. This phrase is because he is a certified exit planner and a financial advisor. And Jason helps entrepreneurs plan for their business to provide freedom and financial security, which is what we all say we want as entrepreneurs. Jason is a vice president with Exponent Prosperity Advisors, also known as Exponent. In our interview, we discussed the things that founders do early in their journey that accidentally sabotage significant wealth creation. He also shares what he's learned about wealth, choices, and service through your business by working with high net worth clients that he has enjoyed and befriended. I think you'll feel prompted to consider how you might change your thinking as you grow into a more mature chief of everything. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Love to be here. Love to be with you. So grateful to be here.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Jason and I are friends. I've learned so much from him about things like how far ahead you need to plan so that as you're building your business, you have all of the right infrastructure with the compensation plans and the right paperwork and the right strategy. Because for many business owners, you've taught me that their business is one of their greatest financial assets, and they in some ways don't treat it right. Is that the paradigm shift we want to start with? Like when you think about what you wish founders knew, is it that or is it something else?
I think the thing that I want founders that I wish that they knew, right, is I think you have to take their story, right? What made them a founder? And more often than not, what made them a founder is that they were tired of doing it for somebody else, or they're tired of clocking in and clocking out for somebody else. They were looking at something made them frustrated and made them step out and say, I can do this myself. But they never really start with the answer, right? They say, I can go, start this on my own. And I don't think if you ask them, what did you want when you started this? Nobody would say, oh, I wanted a job. Like I wanted to go out and, that I was hoping that I could just work and then, maybe save up for retirement. And then I'm like, then why did you leave? Like, why did, and a lot of people, but so they're so focused on survival and all the things that are coming at them. They're just trying to get to the end of the year or to be able to hire that first assistant or to, so they're not really thinking like, where is this actually going to get me? Like, why did I do this? Am I doing this so that I can actually have a liquidation event? Am I doing this so that I can actually have more wealth? Am I doing this so I can have more freedom? What is the real why behind my not wanting to A, do work for somebody, and then B, now that I've created my own company, how do I position myself so that I have what it is that I ultimately, because if you ask them, they would say things like freedom or independence or, these are the things that they're saying. But then when I say, okay, show me where you got that mapped out, right? And they're like, oh, I'm just trying to figure out payroll. So I think it starts with the answer, right? And I always say, you got to start with the answer. What's the answer? I want to have more money, more time, more freedom, more financial independence, the ability to impact things. They want to have a legacy. So I think that's one of the things that are really like a principle that I think people have to start with the answer. Why did you do this? Did you leave have a job or did you leave a job to create a legacy?
Do you think, Jason, it's that people don't, like the average entrepreneur, since they don't come from wealth, they don't have a vision of what wealth could look like. So they still treat their business like a job. Why do you think they make those mistakes or have that perspective?
Great point. And I struggled with this personally for the longest time until I got around wealthy clients, right? And what I witnessed, and so fortunately, let me start by saying this. My clients are all, for the most part, entrepreneurially spirited and started their own business. A lot of them are blue collar. None of them, I don't have a single client who's like third generation wealth. We're not that type of firm. All of our clients, every wealthy client I have, right? When I say wealthy, millions of dollars,
Okay.
they started from scratch. They started from zero. They built it and now they have it. And so I think for a lot of them, even understanding that they're wealthy is a hard concept to grasp, right? But what I've seen and witnessed is a lot of them have almost a guilt. It's not the money that motivates them. They're motivated by their people. They're motivated by making a difference. They're motivated by making an impact. I had a client that treats his business like a ministry, you know? And so
Mm.
he's not thinking about money, but they're wealthy. They're wealthy, wealthy, wealthy. And he was got an offer for his business and he called me like a Sunday night. And his biggest concern is I need to make sure I can still make the impact that I've been able to make if I didn't run this business. Along the journey, he had brought in tax advisors. He had brought it, like he started with us kind of helping him understand how to, like, pointing him in the right direction, and then bringing him the different advisors, the fractional CFOs, the people to kind of come beside him to equip them to really become a business operator as opposed to just an owner who came from corporate America, right? He became a very well-rounded owner, and then that value of that company went from here to here over a 5-year period of time,
Mm.
and now he's kind of seeing the whole vision. Now, but I think the truth is, how do you cast your vision that far out? I mean, Catherine, you've built your organization. I've watched you build your organization, and I watched it grow from a couple of people to hundreds in these conferences. And now you're doing these big, giant, awesome, like I forgot what you call it, but the small group, it's the 6-month deal and it's the times,
Oh, we did the 10X
10
mastermind.
time
Yeah.
mastermind. Yeah, 10x mastermind.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
you probably never thought 10x mastermind. You probably thought
No.
like it'd be cool if I could do a few groups. And then,
Yeah.
like
It's not like I have one group.
that's what I'm saying. So for a lot of people, I don't think,
Yeah.
I think the hard part for what we do is like, you've got to get to a belief system that you can do it and that you can actually survive, you know? I mean, I do
Yes.
this stuff for
Yes.
a living and I'm 8 years
Yes.
into my industry, 8 years into it.
Yes.
And it's just been the last
Yes.
2 years that I've actually been able to, from a financial perspective, start to practice what I preach, really, right? I was just focused on building a business for myself. I couldn't even practice the things I was telling my clients, right? I couldn't deploy certain advanced tax things. I couldn't use certain tools and things that we're doing now. Now I'm actually getting, I'm like, okay, I know where I want to get to. I want to be able to, and I was telling my wife, like, when we hit this threshold, we can do this. When we hit this threshold, we can do this. But imagine how many people don't even know what those thresholds are.
It's just very challenging. But my question, thinking about this concept of wealth and people's relationship with wealth, is I wonder where the energy starts seeping, right? Or where do we start missing the boat where, let's assume there's like some base level chaos and you just have to get your value proposition and your niche and your market. You got to get that stuff figured out. You're not going to get traction and start to scale until you know who you're going to serve and exactly why they want to
Mm-hmm.
buy. But let's say whatever year you get that. When do we start accidentally doing dumb things that are undermining our ability to accumulate wealth?
Oh, our ability to accumulate wealth. Well, let's talk about this. The first step to accumulating wealth is being able to create it, right? And so if you can't make money, you're holding yourself back. And one of the things that I've witnessed is, and this goes back to even in corporate America, like there's so many people out in the world who would tell you the first thing you have to go do is you need to, when you onboard somebody or bring somebody on board, you do all these behavioral assessments. And the last thing you want to do is hire somebody and put them in the wrong job, right? Yet entrepreneurs will take over, and when you first start out, you have to do everything, right? Like, but the one thing that I've witnessed is when people are doing stuff that is just absolutely what they should not be doing, right? Like, meaning your God did not make you that way. Why are you doing that? Why are you spending, and they're pinching pennies, tripping over pennies to, what is it? So tripping over dollars to save pennies, right? So, the amount of times that I've had to Now I've gotten more comfortable with my clients because I developed more confidence and the ability to sit with them and say, I'll start challenging them when I'm out at lunch or dinner. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Why, oh, well, and I'm like, no. Like, that's a $60,000 a year person. Like,
You're saying as opposed to
yeah, you
delegating,
should
right?
go high.
Right.
It's 60
Right.
grand. Like, they're like, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm talking about, like, it might be a lot of money to certain people, but to a person who wants to make $1 million a year, I'm like, or $2
Right.
million a year or $3 million a year, I'm like, you've got to delegate that off to somebody to go do that stuff so you can put your energy and think about the things that you need to be doing. My mom worked 3 jobs. A lot of, especially in this age group, if our parents are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, they came from a different generation, right? So this kind of leveraging tech and this kind of concept that you're supposed to take time for yourself and recharge or actually get to the gym. I grew up in this like badge of honor thing where it was like, how much could you work? And so I think people
Yes.
still carry a lot of that. They have a lot of baggage that
Yes.
they kind of pride
Yes.
themselves on their ability because their dad worked hard, their mom worked hard. My mom worked 3 jobs. So I
Right.
grew up on couches at night, right? So I know what it's like to work that hard. So I just assumed you want to get to the top, right? That's what you do. And then I realized, wait a minute, like I have so much more energy to give the people that are high quality, high touch when I have energy. So I can't give the wrong energy to the wrong things. And the same thing for my clients, right? What I've seen.
I want to make sure that our listeners are catching this because this might be for some of them their first opportunity to meet you. But I'm thinking about how you recently became a certified exit
Yes,
planner,
ma'am.
right? Tell me the right name of the
It's a
title.
CEPA, Certified Exit Planner. Yeah.
Okay. So Jason just became SEPA, and you already, everyone in the firm that sells business also is servicing those clients as a financial
Yes, ma'am.
advisor. So there's certain certifications that go with that. Okay. So Jason's got a lot of certifications. He's got a number of years with this firm. He has worked with dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of different entrepreneurs. I want to make sure our listeners are hearing that he's saying, before you can build $1 million business or a multi-million-dollar business and have a liquidity event, which means your employees take over the company with employee stock purchase, or you
Yes,
sell
ma'am.
it, or you have a partial investment, or you have an exit strategy to sell to have your kids take it over. There's all different
Mm-hmm.
types of ways you can transition your business. But before you can do any of that, he's saying one of the first leakages, one of the first areas that we want our founders to get out of this interview is that as soon as you start making decisions to hold on to things you could have delegated, you just gave up more possibility of wealth
Absolutely.
because you're the seller. You are the seller and the brand and the face of the company for a long, long time. And even if you have a sales team, eventually you're still going to have strategic things that make sense for you to do that don't make sense to hold on to. And that is such an interesting admonition to me because those decisions start in year one, even when you're not making very much money.
Yeah, it's always interesting. We'll start out with a client, and oftentimes they'll come to me for some type of issue, and we'll do a valuation of their business. And when we do the valuation of their business, we do 21 points of risk. More often than not, we're uncovering how much they're in the business, right? And then that's when, through that process and through trust, I'll start to introduce them to fractional CFOs, fractional HR partners,
Cool.
and I start saying, hey, talk to this person, just talk to them, and then next thing you know, you'll find out. Then I'll introduce them to a Vistage or a C12 and say, why don't you get some peers around you? You're not doing any, So there's all these things that we're actually getting, like your members are getting ahead of the curve on, right? They're getting ahead of the curve because they're getting the opportunity to jump into a network that's already socially engineered so that they have resources to help them, right? Most owners are out there swimming, trying to figure this out. And it's like,
Right.
no, dude, you got all these people around you to simplify your life, right? I think
Right. You
the biggest
need people.
challenge for a
People
lot
need
of them is, and I always say, what fix first has the most impact? What of these things, what can you start to get off your table and get delegated out so that you can then go have the most impact? Because choosing is probably the hard thing. Because you can't just go and, if everybody had this unlimited money tree, they could go and hire everybody to solve all their problems. But you don't really. So it's kind of a matter of trying to figure that out. And some of that is going to also come through just learning. I mean, at the end of the day, the truth is too, Catherine, they do have to go out and you don't get to skip to the front of the line. You can't, there's
Yeah.
no part of the journey. I think God intended it that
Yeah.
way, or else you would appreciate it. You would value it, but you have to be
Yeah.
thinking, I'm willing to do this for now so that I can get to this place and then this is gone. I'm moving to this because once I pay this person to do this, I can create this much more money. And then I could pay this
Yes.
person to do this and I can create this much more money. And then you just start simplifying what's coming off your list to free you up to you so that owner creates high value. This is where I'm at how do you know what your most valuable time is until you've gone out and done it? So there is a curve that's required at every level.
Right. We're giving examples of how you start out literally being the chief of
Yeah.
everything in the beginning. There's no one else. And then you want to be a smart chief of everything, meaning I'm delegating and I see what's happening, but it doesn't all have to be me.
Yeah.
That's what
Where
we're
you want to
trying
get
to.
to, right?
Yeah. I want to wrap up with going back to this idea of people's identity and being able to see themselves as a wealth builder.
Mm-hmm.
What are a few examples of sabotaging things that people say or do that you see that show a gap between where they are today and who they need to become to be your client?
Yeah.
To be an Exponent client, you have to be making enough money to be ready to think about things like employee compensation plans, my exit strategy several years from now. And I want to take this assessment that you just mentioned so that I can get myself out of the answers, and all the answers don't say Catherine is the answer to that, to those
Yeah.
things, right? That's what we all aspire to. What are examples of things people say and do that tell you that someone is not ready so that we can catch ourselves on that journey?
That's a great question. Well, I guess the first thing is that you have to make a decision on how much money you want to take home, right? And I don't want to sound rude because I had a personal challenge with money for a long time because I used to obsess about having money. And then I became a believer in Christ. And in that process, I had to lose everything to do that. So then coming back from that, I kind of was like, okay, I don't want to be obsessed with money again. So I'm just going to go out and try to help people. And then hopefully, and I still kind of believe that, right? Like, meaning in my heart, I believe God's going to bring me whatever. But I had a really bad disassociation with money. And then what I've observed from a lot of my clients is, especially in this kind of like, a lot of them, they don't think that they're wealthy. They just can't get in their mind that they're wealthy. And what I mean by that is they have this challenge with it. They have this challenging concept of it. So they almost feel guilty at first to spend money, like it feels odd. Then they're kind of hoarded, like I need it all for the business. I need it all for the business. But honestly, I think a lot of people need to set in their mindset, right? Like they need to have in their mind, right? This is how much wealth I want, right? And then set a goal for it to be meaningful, right? And what I mean by that is in the US, right? The top 1% of earners, top 1%. You know what that number is? Take a guess. To
I
be
do
top
think
1%.
I've heard it. It's shocking. Is it like 250 for the
That's
household or?
close. That's close.
Okay. Okay.
That's the top
Okay.
5%. So if you want
Okay.
to be top
Okay. Okay.
1%, you got to make $500,000 and above in your household.
In your household.
Your household. Your top
Wow.
1%. So my question to everybody is, are you acting like you're top 1%? Have you set the mindset that says, I'm going to be just in the top 1%? When I start to take home $500,000, then I have a tax problem, and there's more advanced tax strategies for people who actually have to pay a lot of tax, right?
Right.
So, I always tell people, like, there's not a lot of help tax planning when you don't pay a ton of tax. So tax strategy, you can put some money in IRA, but you get more complex as you add more entity structure,
Right.
design around certain things, vehicles, deployment of those vehicles. How do you leverage things? When your net worth starts to build and you can lean into other people's money, all those things come from that mindset. But I think the thing that you asked, which is, where does it start? It starts with this. I'm going to set this benchmark for top 1%. So I want to take home $500,000. And $500,000, you're ready to start making a difference. Now, look, a lot of people can save for their future and do really well with less than that. But we're talking about mindset, right? We're talking about ownership. We're talking about what do I have to do differently?
Right.
I can tell you this, every single person who's making $500,000 and $1 million above has typically started to really master the art of how do I free myself up to do optimal things, because they start to quantify their time. And even if they're not paying attention to it, like a lot of my clients, when I'll meet them, they're not really observing it. But then when you show them on paper, they're like, wow, okay, this is how much influence this money has been able to have for me. And so while they're not money driven, you can picture what you're capable of because of it, the difference you're able to make, the nonprofit that you're able to support, the things that you're able to do, the fact that you can't remember the last time you were stressed out. You're stressed out about work, but when's the last time you were really stressed about money?
Right.
That's a lot. Like for a lot of them, it's not even a stressor, right? Not because they're independently wealthy. A lot of times it's trapped all in their business. And that's why it's so important to get value out of that business. But it's because they have an independence that money provides that's different. And that's hard to do.
Gives freedom. Money gives
And
freedom.
to be honest, and it's hard to do. Like, trust me, I know this firsthand knowledge. When you're making 250, 300 as a household, and that puts you in the top 5%, you're sitting here wondering to yourself, and I don't mean this to be rude like, I know money is a touchy subject, so I really want to be mindful of people that listen to this, but I'm trying to help other people think about this, because these are founders. If you're thinking about 200,000 and 300,000, you want to get to that benchmark. But in today's economy, right, after you're done paying for Costco and saving for kids' college and trying to do all this, that doesn't go very far. It's just hard.
Right.
With inflation, it's hard. And now, again, I step into places that are part of the 90% of the population that's below 100 a lot in my free time. And those places, we're so disjointed in understanding their world. But to this audience, what I'm saying is, don't settle for 5%. Settle for 1%.
Yeah. Well, you and I are both fans of Dr. Benjamin Hardy, and he talks about your floor and your frame. And so what's the third F? Floor, frame, and focus. And so we're talking about what your floor is. And so what I want to invite our listeners to do, I'll make kind of a summary comment and ask you to tell me if I've missed anything on this. But I think the invitation for fairly early stage business owners who are listening to this is to jump on the train of starting to train yourself to think like the top 1%. If you don't even know what that means, then the journey begins with, what does that mean?
Right.
And start to read about it, start to find about it. It's kind of like, I want to be a better leader this year. And so I've realized, I have a lot of people I know that teach leader development, and I'm not sure I even know what all those categories are. I need to go research that so that I can learn about it and then practice the things that people are meaning when they say those words. Similarly, if this feels like a foreign concept to you and you think, I can't even conceive of what that would be like, then what Jason is saying is he's saying, if you don't stretch yourself to think that way, it's kind of like a 10x goal. I mean, you're certainly never going to reach anywhere close to it, because we all set these floors for ourselves, and then we make delegation decisions and time decisions and investments back in our business and hiring decisions. Everything comes out of that.
Right.
And so we want to go on a journey that's very aspirational, that's saying, I want to become a client of Exponent, and X years from now, I want to sit down and take the 21-point risk assessment. And I want the answers to be that everything doesn't come back to me because I've been an ineffective chief of everything. We have to take responsibility for the fact that if we say we're in this because we want freedom, then we have to understand that financial success is part of what brings that freedom. You're not going to feel free if you are constantly stressed about money and you actually don't have enough work. I mean, having great sales solves most problems, right? Because you have enough. And so it's not a bad thing to be, I think, provoking people to think about this, because actually that person can't really bill 40 hours a week. So if their real time of their work time, let's say it's not their writing or when they're in their peer group or whatever they're doing. If they're really 20, 25 hours of work, now you do the math. You're like, oh, now we're at a $400 an
Yeah.
hour bill
Yeah.
rate, a
100%.
450, a one.
I'm just talking
I
about
want to be
when you factor in all the energy you put in, right? When you factor in all the
right.
energy you put in and equate to it, if you set your sights for something like, okay, I can't wait till I can hit this threshold, to your point, like, why not start with how you frame your mind up, which says, okay, I'm going to get myself to this type of earnings potential. That'll really help you. If you start there, then you'll look next to, back to your point, you go back down to what you're actually billing per hour and what your, actual time spent with the client's worth. And then you start to really look at that and you go, oh my God, I'm actually worth $500 an hour. So then now you go back to the original equation of what stuff am I doing that's draining me? Would I pay somebody $500 an hour to do that? $250 an hour to do that? No way. There's no way I'm doing that. So if you haven't started with the answer, which is what am I worth, then go do that. And then I do want to leave one thing too, because I think it's really pertinent with what you said. And this is just for every entrepreneur, because maybe if they're the person that's new, and this is more for less than the people that I've seen that are, we talked about people that I meet and they're not there yet, right? And so if we're talking about this kind of entrepreneurial journey, the things that I'm looking for, right, is normally we're talking about that curve, and there's a curve where you can see, okay, this person, they understand their business, they know their knowledge, they understand the cash flow, they've got kind of a grasp on how much money they're going to need over the next 6 months to continue to build their business. The first thing you need to be able to do, though, and this is where I think most entrepreneurs struggle, is they don't know how to go get business.
Mm-hmm.
So go to sell well, right? Like if you're go to grow and then go to sell well, because if you don't know how to go get business, even if God didn't wire you that way, you're going to have to figure it out, right? Because that's the number one thing. Can't do any of this, can't hire people, can't do cool stuff if you can't figure out how to, and you have to get past your first warm network and actually go to the hard part of actually going after people you don't know, which is you're going to get a lot of no, a lot of rejection, and a lot of learning and a lot of development. You got to figure out how to sell. And then once you kind of figure out how to sell, you got to figure out how much you need to sell. And that's where the numbers come from. And how much does it cost you to go get that person, right, that you sold? And then what does that equate to your bottom line? And then actually build a plan. So a lot of times I'll meet people, and this is crazy to me, people that pour concrete, people that do this. And I'm asking them, I'm saying, hey, because they'll call me up and they'll say, hey, I've got some extra money. And I know you do investments. So, what they don't realize is I'm a comprehensive planner. I'm never going to invest your money without a plan. Where I'm going to invest it is going to be 100% dependent on, the strategy. Like, what do you need? How do you need it? Like, it doesn't need to be liquid. Doesn't need, well, I want to save a lot in taxes. Well, don't I could save you in taxes, but then you can't touch the money. So was it a wise decision to invest and help you save $10,000 when you need $40,000 for this next project you're going to need in 3 months? And now you got to pay a penalty to come get that money. So I'm never, ever, that's why I always tell people you pay for flat fee for planning for me first to build a plan, and then we'll implement strategy. And there's a lot of clients that I've done a plan for, and we're not implementing strategy for like year plus 2 years before we can actually deploy any of the stuff that we've been talking about, because we've laid the chassis out, but then they had to go get it.
That's so helpful, though. That's
100%.
so helpful, Jason, to know. Well, and just for you to give the timelines, like to know that's normal. That's okay. I don't have to have everything totally ready before I go have my first conversation with you. I would suspect that that'll be our invitation. That's what we'll say to our listeners. It's like, if you're curious, if you wonder, am I ready for the chassis? Am I ready for that conversation? Ask, right? We'll talk in just a second about how people can reach you, but it is a multi-stage process. And these mindset shifts, learning to think like the 1%, learning to be a better chief of everything, it's an evolution. It's a process. And so you've given us great examples of how you've interacted with people at different stages in that process. And we all want to be higher on the curve, and that's going to take practice.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate your reminder about that, because we've got 2 to 5 years. We're just kind of figuring everything out if we started the business from scratch. And then by then we've learned to sell. We have a better sense of what we're doing. I'm going to actually plan to say, I'm going to make this much money this year. Here's how I know. It's because I've figured out my channels, and I actually can make some real forecasting that comes true because I know what I'm doing, and it's tying into a plan. So it all kind of comes full circle about how all of these things that our advisors are talking about with the different ways that it touches your business, it has to come back to a strategic plan, and it takes practice to get there.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Mm. So, Jason, if people want to learn about
Okay.
Exponent, or they want to know how to learn about your risk assessment or the kind of questions they should be asking if they are beginning to think about, I guess I need to be designing a plan that has an exit of some kind in mind, how will they reach you?
Great. The first thing I would do is just go through LinkedIn. I'm a very fluid LinkedIn user. I'm on there every day. So I would reach out to me on LinkedIn first and foremost, or you can email me at jlee, JLEE at Exponent X. So that's EXPONENTX.net. And they can email me there. You can check out our website. I would say this for my typical client, right? And what I've observed is from the time that I've engaged with somebody to the time that they're working with me is usually 18 months to 2 years. And let me tell you why. Okay. If someone's brought to me as a referral because they're hitting some of these milestones and those conversations are coming up. So a tax advisor, a business coach, CFO says, hey, you're already kind of starting to hit these thresholds. Let's introduce you. I'll typically engage with that person right away. But for that person who's reached out to me or I've met or cold called or, I still make tons of cold calls. So, somebody that I reached out to and didn't really know their financial situation, stepped into it and only uncovered that they were still kind of hitting that curve, then man, I started engaging with them. I'm taking them to coffee every quarter, every month, even sometimes lunch. I'm walking through their business. I'm trying to ask them the right questions. I'm trying to help them equip themselves to get there so that we can work together. So they can be a client. And then because what I've seen is it's like a hockey stick, right? There's all this investment of time and energy and it just starts doing this thing right here. And then bam, it just takes off, and then it's the funnest thing in the world because if we're engaging and I'm supporting you, we're spending time on this stuff and we set these goals and these dreams, as soon as that threshold hits there, then it's like, cool. Then we're able to engage in this conversation. It's the funnest thing in the world for me. I brought in like 3 people last year. I brought in 12 new people, brought in 3 of them, and they were those stories. They were those stories of, I've been with you, we've been waiting, we've been hanging out, and now I feel like I'm winning with them, right? Because now we're like, okay, cool. Well, here, pay my design fee and let's start building a plan. Because also, you don't want to put the cart before the horse. If we don't want to put a lot of energy into something. I will say this. There's other places you could spend your energy. Like I would rather them spend their energy on figuring out how to sell, figuring out where they're going to be at. If it's too early in the journey, you cast the vision, go, but let's not spend money and time on this because we need to go spend your money and time on the things that are going to go get you to that, go get that first paycheck in or go get that first threshold or that first milestone.
Sure.
Like I said, you got to start with a vision, but you also don't want to start spending. That'd be the equivalent of going in and not really doing bookkeeping, but going and saying, I need to hire a fractional CFO. Hold on. First thing you got to do is do your books. Like start right there. So, but I will meet them anywhere in the journey and do life with them. And if I'm not their advisor today, I'm going to do everything I can so I can be their advisor in the future.
Right. It could be my 30 plus years of living with my in-house psychologist.
That's fantastic.
Jason knows my spouse.
Yeah, it sounds
Dr.
awesome
Ryan Brown.
and scary at the same time.
Yeah, it is. But I do think that so much of what our listeners will take from what you're sharing, Jason, about the journey and doing things in a certain order and setting a high aspirational vision about what's possible and then sort of reaching and practicing into that 1% vision. So much of it is about the decisions we make about who we're going to become. I'm struck with, to me, one of the themes that's coming out of this conversation is that the meaning making that we make around our business. What am I going to make money mean? What am I going to make wealth mean? What does it mean to be, quote, wealthy? What does it mean to sell a business? You have to do battle with yourself, with your own stories and your own models, like you said, with your mom, with her 3 jobs, right? You have to decide who you want to become and frame that in the most positive way that will help you take the actions that get where you're trying to go. People say they want freedom, but they don't make choices that actually contribute to freedom, because sometimes it's more important to be right than it is to actually wrestle with your money story or delegate or learn to be a better leader. And we're really calling people to a higher calling. We're saying your business can be the vehicle to bless the world and all the people that work for you and all the customers you serve. You got to develop a plan and you got to work on you to get there. And I think it's special that you are willing to invest in people as they evolve in that process, so that when the time is right, they begin actually putting the right steps in place for the tax advantages, for the preparation, for the exit that is right for them and their family.
Well, I enjoy people more than anything, right? And their journeys and their experiences. And I think that investing in them is, well, like I said earlier, I feel like I win when they win. So getting to have that is so critical. And I'll be honest,
Yeah.
we tackled this, and I can't emphasize this enough. Tackling your own inner struggle with money or with the things that you're battling with is so critical. You have a member of yours, Catherine Pomerantz, I think it's her name. Is that correct? Did I say that right? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So Catherine is phenomenal, but she really spoke at one of your wonderful conferences, and I think it was the Grow Conference last year. And I was really taken back by it, but I want to really add emphasis to this, because I think people feel guilty when they start thinking, I want to make money or I want to earn money. And some people, that's all they think about, right? But a lot of the people on the Good Human Growth Network are good humans. We're not really in it for the money, but at the same time, we also kind of have this disassociation with, hey, it's also okay to make really good money. It's okay to think about getting a second home, and it's okay to do, because you can also still be a great boss and still be great with your kids and still be great in your community and be great in your church. And like you can do all these things and have a ton of money. How do I know that? Because I work for these clients. I get to spend time with them every day.
I learned so much every time I talk with you. And I also feel encouraged because there's things that I need to do on my journey to continue to learn to think like a 1%er and to have that framework. And every time I spend time with you, I move along on that path because you give the categories and the frameworks and talk about mistakes to avoid. And so I'm so grateful to have Jason in my life as a guide, which is why I wanted you to hear from him. So remember, think of Exponent for the exit advisory, for compensation plans for employees when you're thinking about benefits, things like you might aspire someday to have an employee stock purchase plan, different things like that. They have the knowledge and the resources, the consulting partners, and the relationships to put together a comprehensive plan so that the business you build really builds the freedom that you want. Jason, thank you for this time today and for teaching people how to be a better chief of everything.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
Appreciate you.